Alpha energizes. Identities omega. Your value Y. Y is always value. Value nature, value V. Value nature V is added as invisible value gained as evolution, as victory. Victory is value, as nature, inherently, actively, and progressively. And this is its lesson, its course. Lost English. Campus Marcius return. Excuse me. I always do this when I'm eating. After so this is very important. Denatured Campus Marcius. I want English. The Old Testament and the Quran are about pantheism's sabotage, about the sabotage of the Campus Marcius. Now this is demonstrated by the conversation with the Quran, but this is not had because it's being forced to argue opinion natures in relationship to the scholarship, not in relationship to the Quran. Religions had to take counter, there's positive value nature, to discern the identity of positive as an identity of value. This is a process of correlations, active means, inherently, actively, and progressively, which is ratiocination. Books have, each of the sciences obfuscated, worse than obfuscated. For example, when you blame negative value nature progressions caused by colonization's breaching organized crime method with and to that on other things, right? What are you blaming it on? Something it's not. And you're defending that fact treatment nature. And that's not by accident being exploited. There's a breaching method investing all formal and all natures to multi-front roles, furthering their own needs. And natures only realized needing to cover life progressions. As standing life progression cover up natures. And where and how it counts. In one way amounts. We must understand the ancients, in other words, people couldn't believe. How could they be about, if they're about themselves, they're about a relationship to a negative value nature progression. And their relationship to, they're about the relationship to positive, and positive is nature, which will only stay a positive value nature progression unto itself, inherently, actively, and progressively, as the value of immediate space nature. Just like all distinct parts of our body share one identity that is positive onto it, inherently, actively, and progressively or not. All space nature has one identity that has all parts of it only inherently, actively, and progressively positive onto it. And even negative value nature. And English is revealed to teach this. This is about a relationship to zero coming through left to right, and at the same time as a value coming right to left. This is the same reason we're supposed to see not three natures of difference. Everything has three natures. This is also why we need, they say even if someone did do something, they said something right, wrong, or something like that, or if they get things wrong with, not with justice, because that's a physical value, but with nature of the law, with truth, with lies maybe attached to it, criminal persuasions attached to truth, maybe recorded like database lies. Well, formal branches roles with lie progression cover-ups tied to all the things that they're blaming on what is not, with and as opinion natures, force, not ratiocination, which is always why, always noting exceptions. We're using this is ratiocination works with positive identity. What is not positive always is not truth as positive. Also, a nature that can be either positive unto itself or not, which science demonstrates, but for obfuscations because of only let realize formal lie progression cover-up natures, as comparison natures, as negative value nature, same thing bottom up, and the same thing by leaders top down because of the nature of all the time impositions, hundreds of nations forced to shared markets, policing originally forced, ulterior from the natural one tactically, to have all invested to roles and as identities ulterior from the identity shared. So physics is only positive value one way. In other words, when you come to the negative value nature parts of religions, they're only positive in relationship to criminal insidiousness. A method by criminal insidiousness natures only let realize as the species natures since ancient criminal re-engineering of ancient campus Marcius that revealed the name Allah before the Quran. Thank God for the Quran. The Quran is about this because the ancients could not believe that they could forget how to create positive value nature progressions. And what engineered this method, this is an organized crime method, a breaching method of our species against our fact-keeping nature. I'm not a lawyer, not a criminal. I'll show you. Ratiocination reveals in relation to mentality-based relationships, relation to fact-keeping, the way the total defended, and then how that's covered up and told to, and exploited it. How, in other words, how everything stays abridged, how we have the forced enslaved fact treatment natures, tortured fact treatment natures, extorted fact treatment natures of our founders, forced to hide that. Forced to play the criminal insidiousness nature they were forced with that. Even after the Constitutional Convention, having hide roles. That means they're still having to pretend what was being pretended then for the organized crime breaching method. That wasn't just for a method then, but for a method perpetually to keep the Republic criminally re-engineered. Ancient nation sciences. The Republic is not an identity of one nation, as it is as Etruscan Rome, which is two natures. When it is the proper nature, is the third nature, America. This is not an identity of value, but the only identity which is positive's identity, unto itself, inherently active and progressively. This influence is not, there's no such thing as a criminally legalized criminal enterprise, per the only overall value nature system. Truth not used as a lie. Beginning of the Old Testament is what it's about when it says you just have to, they're talking about a relationship to the value nature system. So we come to Cain and Abel, we come to the weird spellings and the names of that begin the ground. This is effects into the generation of humanity in relationship. Adam is the subject and Eve is the verb. And this is going to show a distinct relationship they have as identity of value. In other words, when a verb is not used as a main verb, it becomes a distinct identity of value. It becomes a participle nature or an infinitive nature, or one of those two. Infinitive, or the infinitive is formed by adding ing, the present, participle nature. Present participle is formed by using ing to a verb. Now you change the identity of the verb. It's no longer of a main verb. It's no longer. It's now. If you said run, now it's the main verb. If I said running, start running. Start is the main verb now, and running is the subject. The subject's identity is defined in relationship to the predicate, which is always a positive relationship to itself in English. In the law, sharing the same nature, identity with the sciences as one body, the positive has a negative relationship to itself as positive with the predicate act. I'm not a lawyer again. I'm not a criminal. I'm an expert on English grammar. Alpha's energy. Alpha energizes identities omega, your value y. That's left to right. In omega, in Allah, space nature's identity energizes us, right to left, as the same identity of value, as the same body of value, bigger than both of us, as a body of value. The wind is in demonstration that there is a clear body in demonstration to us, space nature. It is in diffusion through itself. When this matter goes away, its identity came and was progressed. What was not let to progress be of positive, inherently active and progressive value of space's identity here in the phenomena of immediate space is forced from here, length of hadid, as negative value nature of progression, to continue positive value nature progression somewhere else. This is the nature of space with zero gravity, because the integrity of a forever nature progressing its value through temporary space nature, the only way it could be in this it could bring the identity that is incompatible with temporary space nature, is in relationship to the two semi-negatives. Matter, but per the inherent unchanging positive value of the identity of that part of the overall identity of space, the bond to matter. This goes away, that value never left. It was some progressive value. And then, as the nature of consciousness, and then as this relationship to itself. And because all space shares it, it's also in relationship to itself, in relationship to the value of matter, which is connected as the same body, which is going to force evolution here, or it's going to force it from here, de-evolution, length of hadis, in relationship to, if we all follow, it's already revealed, Campus Marcius, in ratiocination, which is a fact treatment nature, a correlation, active correlation nature that cannot work with opinions first, and it cannot justify them, and it cannot force them glorified. It cannot take emotional defense to it can demonstrate right through fake identities and what pretends other, in other words, the original positions, inherently active and progressive in position. In other words, the hard parts of the religion that people don't agree with, they get harder only because we're not figuring out what's wrong and making the negative value nature progressions. These are counter-insidiousness natures to an insidiousness that's right through nations and really hurting in relationship, because it takes lies, it takes standing lie progression cover-up natures forced by terror, not worse than terrorists, forced by organized crime method, forced by hundreds of nations forced to share broken market positions as ill fact treatment natures, juxtaposed with overtly and unrealized internation criminal enterprises, criminal insidiousness natures, and that covers up. In other words, these markets are also unstable, even kings don't have free speech because there's too many conditional things everyone's relying upon simultaneously as nature's relying upon a bridge fact sheet in nature justifications. And that nature doesn't have the sophistication defending that at the same time to defend from what makes that just stacked databases with illusions, and have roles with witness fabricated they don't even understand. Everyone's just lie, progression, cover up nature. In other words, blaming on nature and expert lean and groupthink, which is a phrase I didn't make, but it's tied to the world wars, and it was tied to the nature of the fact treatment, nature, slavery, and extortion of our founders that they didn't have free speech. See T is cherry tree. See White's of Vowels Decipher applies. Alpha energizes identities, omega, your value Y. Why do I put the value in there? As a nature, clear. What is the point? What is the wind saying? Clear value as a body. As value. The only one that is value as a body. Because that's the only course inherently, actively, progressively, there's no other one that is the finite's value at the same time and overall's value at the same time. So what's that mean? It means this body of values. Not just concept, but the nature contained here. English is the internation sciences revealed. With the yang and yin yang, painting, Trinity. Trinity, why? For example, courts make a mistake. Courts have criminality with jails. So what do they need? They have ill fact treatment natures there. We know this happens through time. What do they need? They need some place for someone to be able to point out every second. But they were set up. This relationship to St. Nicholas, too. Misprision. Look up the word misprision. But they obfuscate words. Like ratiocination. And like correlation. English is a correlation nature. Ratiocination is an active form of correlation. So we'll examine three natures. I mean the nature of the Trinity. And with every physical body of value, and how it's greater than it. Just like every cell of our body is a physical body of value. But it has a nature that extends beyond that as its identity, as the shared identity. Because this is what's in demonstration of us. Ratiocination uses the identity, that uses positive as an identity of value. And that's why we're going to see Adam is the subject and Eve is the verb. And that's why God is telling them. God is a concept that to understand, until you understand, you have to believe in the subject. You have to follow the subject. And when you understand the subject, which is life, and how to explain it as a fact treatment nature, everything is a fact treatment nature as this identity coming through here. So, there is way. There are unbelievable means, because when you're trying to be this is what it's trying to say. This is the evolution, the garden where it comes from, out of nowhere. As long as you're on this is a value nature system. First, Adam and Eve were on God's value nature system. This has in other words, this is showing how man and woman are the same value. All identities are the same fact treatment nature. In demonstration, if we progress what is positive onto its identity, inherently, actively, and progressively. This is the sequence nature. That's a nature. Law is a nature. Truth is a nature. But if it's being used as a value, as a physical value, with a physical value, in other words, as a lie, there's not, this requires to settle these things, not to have hurt, and not to have something that can perpetually stay behind. Our divisions only realized, cultivated with roles to keep everyone blaming everything on everything else as a pseudo sophistication, comparison nature, predatory litigation nature, to all areas, formally and informally, and internation formally shared here, and not, overtly gangland. That's another phrase I already made. No, overtly criminal enterprise, criminal insidious natures, like wrongdoers in their acts, like predicate acts, which is inherently, actively, and progressively of negative value nature. And with negative value nature progressions with nations, as criminal insidiousness natures is only that realized self-defended, incapable of understanding, but through their own needs to cover lie progressions, the nature and methods exploiting all of us in them as victim predators, our formal stewards. See, that's how they figure. What do you think they're telling the kids? Kids, their whole lives trying to wonder what sick people in the world would make slavery over here, and do that, and why our George Washington would leave slavery in the North, even though he brought allied with the French general to counter-extort what was here in Connecticut. It was internation science. There was only extent they could do that to, and they couldn't show the full sophistication. In other words, they'd leave it half breached, and with us, with them like this, use ratiocination, use correlation, defend correlation. We're not being allowed to use correlation. And what's not allowing it is blaming negative value nature progressions on other causes. And that has roles with too many natures of crime that are verbal, especially as government, in other words, to all areas. You have to explain how it was a fact-cheating nature trick. You have to explain the recorded, forced glorified, and hid, even though it's recorded, laws that were fact-cheating nature, torture, and slavery of all colonists, and of the Native Americans first, inherently, actively, and progressively. But we also have to know inherently, before that, they were and are the internation sciences that were the campus Marcius. We have to understand criminal persuasions and criminally persuaded fact-cheating natures and physical delusions with sciences that are with summary convictions regarding physical evidences with history, and regarding body of value evidences with history, and without addressing the nature of criminal seriousness that was within that as the methods of the organized crime that was using things like slavery to forge fake sides and to forge natures only capable of blaming what was hurting them on other, and as breaching nature, and as breaching roles, self-maintained now, all nations breaching roles. When they said shock and awe, that was a hurt reaction, also tricked to then defend that word, those wording, as a fact-cheating nature. This organized crime that stole ancient revelations understands that we're a fact-cheating nature. Everything's a fact-cheating nature. Anyways, if you take the Quran in sequence, all the debatable parts about it, those things get relented if you let the king have his conversation, and if you let the other nations have their conversations. This is why the dress with the religions is different, not to try to look important. You know, they would the religion, they're showing us to see three ways. Positive relationship to itself, but also in relationship to a negative value nature progression, where negative value nature has positive value nature relationship. In other words, where positive makes it positive to itself, not to us. But just by identifying that, we're identifying and understanding what is negative value nature more. And this is an identity that realizes clear means. Like wind comes in, the body of value, evolution, and or blows away. The evolution, Lithavadis. To end the species value nature system, return religion train, return to links from lines. You lost your game, the game of games. Who trains, religion try. The religion is not positive value nature relationship to it itself as identity when not native. No, too. Native Americans. It is most logical. Not most logical. Logic is not a nature. It is most positive, more correct to say that, to believe, to convict that Native Americans were part of the Campus Marcius, internation sciences that were criminally re-engineered, stolen, and criminally re-engineered, taken away from the memory of all modern nations, and to invest in and employ fact treatment nature itself to roles as a breaching nature, maintaining our own self